decision from the Supreme Court today overturning Roe v. Wade in a 6-3 vote.
That's right. I'm Alex Stockwell. The move effectively removing the constitutional right to get an abortion. Trigger law bans are now expected in roughly half of all U.S. states. We're looking at video of protesters gathering outside in the nation's capital right now. This decision coming more than a month after the stunning leak of that draft opinion in which the Supreme Court justices basically indicated their intent to take this momentous step to overturn Roe v. Wade.
As you can imagine, there are strong opinions on both sides of this decision. You can see here thousands of people gathered outside the Supreme Court there in Washington, D.C., making their voices heard on this issue. We had the leaked draft opinion. We knew this day was coming. Now that we are here, we can only imagine.
And
this
is a decision. This is a decision that takes away a ruling that has been protected for nearly 50 years in this country. So the decision, knowing that it was imminent after that the decision was leaked, the opinion was leaked, we've been expecting this to come. Now that it is here, of course, reaction pouring in from all across the country. Absolutely. Both the Texas governor and gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke having reactions. We'll get to those in just a bit. For now, we want to check in with Sandra Spurgeon. She is a litigation expert joining us now to talk about the magnitude of this Supreme Court ruling. Sandra, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What is your reaction to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade?
Well, I think that in looking just from a legal analysis opinion, they're telling us that the right to an abortion is not a constitutionally protected right, that it's not named in the Constitution, but then they did a deep dive into the 14th Amendment and the historical analysis our president. And depending on the cases that you chose to look at, or perhaps a different decision could have been rendered. However, I think that over the last few days, I've been talking to other women, younger women, Generation Z, and I think that the issue that we have, or that they're having, is the the nature of the Supreme Court. I mean, look at the fencing around the Supreme Court this morning. There is no recourse. There's no ability to reverse. There's no appellate court to go to. And I think that is the uprising, the fear that that when they analyze the different states who've already outlawed abortion, I think that there is a real concern regarding the health rights and the right for decision for women to make about their own bodies.
And Sandra, here in Texas, this state is one of several that has a trigger law ban that would go into effect essentially 30 days from the Supreme Court's judgment. But that doesn't include, there's a lot of gray area within the state of Texas regarding previous laws and precedents that have been set. Can you talk about the complications that are to be anticipated, especially within these next 30 days?
Well, I think that the Supreme Court opinion essentially says they're returning that decision to the states, and that the constituents, they can vote those judges in or out of office, those legislators in and out of office. So they're really giving the power back to people. But we know that with such varying degrees of, this is a very heated topic, whether the right to live or the right to an abortion, and if some states allow an abortion, under what terms is it under, if there is a rape, or at what point do they determine viability? Some people believe that the right to live begins at conception. Other people believe that the right to an abortion ends at the 15-week mark, when the fetus becomes viable. So there's no even-handed way consistent way in which states will be handling this issue. And I think that that's the continuity of the federal decision is what was so important to so many people, in terms of, okay, states, this is all, everyone across the board, here's the law, here's the rule, and we're all going to follow it. now that the power is being returned to the states, we're going to see, just like you said, there's going to be chaos and confusion about which law applies and when, and depending on when the legislators go in and out, those laws could change every 4 years.
So when Texas passed its law recently banning abortions after 6 weeks, we saw Texas women traveling to other states to get an abortion. That is no longer an option for them. Talk a bit about the complications and the ramifications for women regarding this overturning of Roe v. Wade. Let's talk impact.
Well, I think from a legal standpoint, all I can do is to tell you what the basis of the Supreme Court decision is. And then the various confusion I think that we see throughout the different states regarding the laws as to when a woman has the right to terminate a pregnancy or not. I mean, the ethical issue is really rests within that individual as to what the choices that they may make. And so I think that the uprising is that they've taken away that decision, right? They've taken away that ability for a woman to make that decision. We have people now governing what we can and cannot do. And I'm not making an ethical statement or a moral statement as to what I would choose or not do. I'm just saying legally, in typical issues that are broad span public related issues, it has always been a matter of the federal government to govern so that there is consistency to ensure even and equal treatment. It should not vary between state to state as to what a woman can and can't do. That's why it becomes an essential fundamental liberty for women throughout the country. That would be like saying, because I am a female, I can't go into a certain state and do what a man can do. I can't vote. I mean, are those the rights? Are we going to start walking back those rights as to gender, race? That's the scary part. I've been interviewing people all week of various age groups and saying, so what's the difference? What's the big deal? From a legal analysis, I see the legal reasoning, but this goes well beyond. It's not whether something is spelled out in the letter of the law, but it is whether it is a fundamental, is of essential nature that it makes it that it falls within the due process of the 14th Amendment. And I think that that's where the uprising and the upheaval is coming, is that this issue should be governed by a body that applies to all women across all 50 states, not just in the state of Texas, not in the state of Kentucky, not in the state of North Carolina. All women should be treated equally, whatever that decision may be.
Yeah, that's the far-reaching impact. Absolutely.
Exactly. And Sandra, of course, one of the biggest reactions right now is, reacting to how long Roe v. Wade has been precedent here in the United States, nearly 50 years, as a ruling now being overturned, and the concern a lot of people have, fearing that this could be a Pandora's box effect, that this opens the door potentially for other established decisions to now potentially be reevaluated and possibly overturned in the similar regard of Roe v. Wade. What is your legal expert analysis on that?
It's just the same as we have just talked about. I think that the concern is that when you have individuals who have no term, meaning they cannot be voted out, that's the end of the road, if you will. That's the finality of the decision. And so is it going to take another 50 years for the consistency of rulings to be made, for it to be brought back to a federal level? Here in this case, you have the state of Mississippi essentially suing an abortion rights clinic, which brought this decision to a head. And so it's interesting to me that we had Roe v. Wade 50 years ago, but now in 2022, it seems as in this case, we're stepping back in time. And so again, I'm not making an ethical or moral statement but from a legal analysis, why the Supreme Court would overturn or set aside its predecessors' opinions from 50 years ago that has been a controlling decision. It really is confusing and quite disappointing.
I hear you, Sandra. I do want to move the conversation from talking about Texas women in particular to talking about the healthcare profession, right? Because this is going to impact their care and delivery to Texans at large, especially as it regards in vitro fertilization, miscarriages. What recourse do physicians and healthcare professionals have? Because on one hand, there's the Hippocratic Oath, right? Do no harm. On the other hand, you have this landmark decision in addition to Casey versus Planned Parenthood. And so what happens with a healthcare professional? Are there any protections when it comes to these gray areas of miscarriages and how those are managed, and also in vitro fertilization? Does that fall under this umbrella as well, and what might be the fallout from that legally?
I think that that is correct. I think that the physicians are going to have the ability to make a decision that in the event of a medical emergency, that they're going to be able to make those decisions. And if it's in the best interest of the mother in terms of a life or death situation and be from a medical standpoint. But I think it's going to take several years, not just in Texas, but in every state to ferret out when it is appropriate and when it isn't. But I can tell you in real life that physicians are not going to stick their neck out and take the risk of being criminally prosecuted. Look, they're already the clinics that, look in Louisville, Kentucky, at the abortion clinic when they were having people pelted with rocks and paint thrown on them. Even when it was, even when Roe v. Wade was still standing, they were people outside physically harming and intimidating the medical staff to where it's not an area in which there were already a lot of physicians doing those procedures. So it really is this law will really eliminate and make it extremely difficult for any physician to make that decision. They're not going to make it. And look, most of the physicians in the state of Texas and throughout the country are now employees of hospitals, and the hospitals will be making those decisions, not the physicians. There'll be written policies and procedures telling them what they can and cannot do. And those physicians are not going to risk their livelihood for another person. It just is not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Litigation expert Sandra Spurgeon, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Yeah, providing some great insight for us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.